the moment that we discuss is probably quite an important one in terms of history of healthcare in Poland, because we're just started to deliver e-documents. And in particular, I think the internet, patient's internet file, as it's called in direct translation from Polish, the place where I can go and see my data, and probably my doctor can do it and see all the background way back of how my health was changing, hopefully for better, not for worse. Is it really the sign of something new that is really coming? Is it an opportunity for startuppers and for businesses to build more value, to make more money, but at the same time provide, you know, valuable healthcare services to patients?
Yeah, so I think maybe it's nice to just combine a little bit some of the things that were said, because I think there's a lot of commonality in the discussion we're having. For me, digitization is connecting these different parts of the health continuum. We talked about healthy living, so that has to do with diet, with activity, but also with sleep, for instance. Sleep is sometimes underestimated, but if you realize that the person who sleeps 8 hours a night versus a person who sleeps 5 hours, he has an 80% higher likelihood of having a heart disease. If you take those things into account, you would sleep more. Prevention, absolutely crucial. COPD was mentioned, cancer screening, but for instance also sleep apnea, which is a disease that most people don't even know they have, but it's very well treatable. You can catch things early and you avoid very expensive hospital environments, as you were mentioning. Now, when you then get into the hospital, it's all about monitoring. Making sure that when a patient comes in, that you constantly take care of that, of their vital signs and their statistics. But also when people move out of a critical care environment into the general wards, and that's typically an environment where a lot of things go wrong because the same type of supervision is no longer there. But there's actually very easy solutions for that with patches and then tracking the systems, also using algorithms, identifying when something goes wrong. So you can catch a critical instance early. But then most important for me is actually getting people then also out of the hospital into the home environment again, because the hospital is a very expensive environment. It allows people to recover quicker. And the reality is that I think 80% of people over 65 have at least one chronic disease. Now, if you think about that, then it's more about managing your chronic disease than actually completely curing it. And that can be easily done by using data. And then if you connect all this across these different care moments, you can actually empower doctors not to just have that one face-to-face interaction, but actually get data throughout. If you think again about the home environment, just think about something simple as your dental cleaning. If you could provide your dentist with data of the last half year, instead of him just checking, the information he gets is much higher. Same if you have a chronic heart failure patient, if the doctor can continually track how that patient is developing at home, you could avoid a heart attack from happening.
These are very good examples. I fully agree. However, I think this is the start, right? E-prescription is the start, and we need to have more and more data, health data. But the question is, even if we have the data, we need to know how to use them, to all of the algorithms, how to make a real benefit from the data. So the question is whether we can, as a society, design a system, regulatory system, that different companies can, based on the data, mine the data and prepare different programs, systems, technologies to use them in the proper way. And this may be not as easy. I mean, we need to really think about that in details, using legal, regulatory, but also I would not be afraid to use this data, let's say, as a business data, once we have the regulatory system, legal system in place. Because it makes lots of opportunities to based on that, to prepare different companies and technologies to put to the market for the benefit of the patients, right?
Because there are threats also with the data. Because if my watch collects too much data and everybody can, well, not everybody, but authorized doctor. But then if authorized doctor can check the data, then there can be fraud, and I may not get good job because my health is not good. You know, there are, I mean, we can write an Orwellian novel around it. I don't want to scare anybody. So there are, Madam Professor, how you think?
I would like to comment at this moment that we have to think and discuss and deliberate about safety of data. Because at the end we have citizen or patient, and there is a long way, as Dr. Wieczorek said, from collecting data to proper using them. And I think for this, it is extremely important to educate society how to use the data. Because from our experience, it is quite clear that if the person, if a patient or citizen does not know why we are collecting data, in what way we are collecting data, it will be like the pills that you were talking about. We will produce a treatment, but it will not be accepted by the society. So I think from the point of view of the university, it's very important to introduce education, innovative education at each stage of incorporation of these new technologies to the market, to the society, to the healthcare. And this is also the subject of innovative education that we are trying to incorporate within EIT Health.
Because you're the data experts on on global scale. Yeah. Can I feel safe with my data? Is it at all possible to keep it safe?
Yeah. And the data is nowadays from the patient and from the hospitals. We do not have property on the clinical data that we process. But my image that before we had a room full of paper, nowadays we have a room full of servers with a lot of computers.
Not much difference.
Not much difference. The format is different, but we need to move from data to information and actionable information. And what can we do with that? And what can the doctors do with that and the patients do with that? Of course, it has to be anonymized data, and everything about privacy has to be respected in order to be used in prevention, to be used in drug delivery, drug adherence. But I think we have to move from the number of acts that we do in healthcare to the outcomes that we want to measure. It doesn't make sense for the surgeon to do and say that the surgery, it was okay, but for the patient it's very different because he goes out from the hospital in a wheelchair. So the outcomes and how we can address all these data that we have inside the hospitals and outside the hospitals should be measured and should have outcomes that should be important to society and to the patients, no matter if you are talking about prevention or treatment. So we should gather the data, respecting, of course, the privacy, and get the trust of the professionals and from the patients that the data is being used in the right way. I think that's important.
Mr. Fuyers.
I agree. And the first issues with this data and breach and public scandals happened within the internet companies and social media, where the whole mentality is different. The motto is first break it and then fix it. And I have hopes because first, Europe is much more careful about it. We have a leading regulation on data protection. And these companies on the stage, but also in the healthcare, they have in their DNA this carefully managing people, responsibility people. So companies who are running clinical trial, they know that it's a dangerous business and you are playing with the fire. So I really have hope that if somebody in the world can solve it, because it has to be solved, because it has such an enormous benefit, these companies will be in Europe who will be the front runner of handling data in a good way.
Agreed, but if this will be one big system, the end point of that system on my wrist will probably be a consumer product. And you know, there is the one company with famous for its products, which has a watch which is FDA approved device for heart measurement, right? So you know, this is where the problem probably starts, and this is probably also what EIT Health has to address, because very often regulation sort of kills innovation, or at least they're not very friendly things, not really going together. So how can we go through it? Before I'll ask about level of innovations in Central and Eastern Europe, of course.
Your example of these monitoring health, and it is produced by companies, it's always a struggle, because you want to increase the power and lifetime of this sensor, which requires power, and you try to reduce the power consumption of this device. And encryption, which is important for the data, requires power. So and if you optimize it, you will always shift to the dangerous field of sparing electricity on encryption and data protection. But here, when regulation comes in, so the first and key issue is regulation. But when you mentioned this e-prescription, and the government is changing the data in the electronic format, the biggest advantage is if it is a public service, a platform, a public good, everybody can use and innovate. But the weakest link in this whole value chain is the state itself, because they are not from this, with this mindset like the healthcare companies. And I'm afraid that the biggest risk will be with this publicly held databases that will be breached. So regulation, but the state should use this regulation first on itself.
All right, that's a very interesting notion. I would like to change the course of our discussion for a moment, because there's one of the reasons that EIT was funded was strengthening innovation in Europe, and in particular EIT Health InnoStars concentrates on markets like Poland, Hungary, basically CEE, where we have modest and moderate innovators according to innovation scoreboard. Why, after so many years of efforts to strengthen innovation, Central and Eastern Europe is doing so bad? Well, it's not so very bad, but still, you know, when you compare to, you know, old EU, the distance is still pretty big. So why is it so? What are the perspectives? How do you think? Let me start with our host, then I think Madam Professor could say a few words, as the Łódź University of Medical University is co-host of the conference. And then I would like to hear the business side of the story also.
Okay. The main reason for existence for EIT Health is to unlock the research results from the universities, where the public finances a lot of research but is ending up like a publication, and bring it to the market with the help of commercial companies. What we see here in Eastern Europe and also Southern Europe is the gap between what the universities can offer and what the companies need is larger than somewhere else. On the one hand, we need much more education, innovation, entrepreneurship within the universities. We need this third leg, so next to education and research, there's this commercialization, valorization. The universities in innovation hubs are working on this third leg for a longer time. And then the companies, we need more middle-sized companies who have the resources to really turn to the research results and utilize them. Or we need the multinational companies, but delegating more mandate to do local innovation, so it's not only centralized in the headquarters of the multinational companies. If we close this gap, we just need to inspire them to collaborate. Because when we try to invite to Eastern Europe, one of the largest accelerator in the world, it's an American organization, and after London and Berlin, whether they open up a site here in Eastern Europe, the first question was that, okay, we don't care about the startups, because if we come to Eastern Europe, we will have the startups because of our name. It's like a magnet. What we care about are three things. First, a flow of talents, young talents, who can enable the startups to grow, access to hospitals to validate the ideas, and access to companies to give commercial feedback and validation as well. And I have to say that on the third and the second and third item, we are weak because we still don't have this culture, we don't have the focus of the management, the freedom to operate with startups, and we have to change it. And that's the ecosystem development that EIT is working on in this region.
How long before we see, the explosion that would put us, like countries like Poland, much higher in the scoreboard? Is it like 5 years, 10 years?
It's 10,
Can we estimate
years.
it at all?
According to all the other studies, we visited MIT, Boston, how they develop themselves. We also visit, for example, this year with the partners from Eastern Europe, we went to Technion Israel, we went to Erlangen, we visited MIT. We are looking for the best innovation hotspots. We would like to learn from them. We invite mentors, best practices, and we discuss with them how to do this. And according to their experience, is 10, 15 years of hard work until we really establish a ecosystem that is functioning just like them.
10, 15 years written down, Madam Professor.
I will start from one additional information, because for people who observe us, it may be not clear. EIT Health InnoStars are really located in, let's say, a less developed part of the Europe. However, the idea of EIT Health is to collaborate with other partners from other CLCs, much more developed. And I think this is a chance. This is a chance that the institutions involved in EIT Health InnoStars partnership got to collaborate with the best universities, with the best companies on much closer way, and to shorten the time that is needed to cover the gap, or to lower the gap between better and worse developed institutions. Thinking about this from the perspective of university, I can say that this kind of organization really supports the very fast improvement of the innovation understanding in the within institution. And that's crucial, because to shorten the gap, to become much more competitive, much more innovative, we need good examples. As Balázs said before, taking the best practices from the best universities, from the best companies, from the best accelerators, we can shorten the gap. It is very hard work, but I also do believe that there is an innovative spirit somewhere in our countries, and to create proper environment is to release it. If we support startups, if we support young people, younger and younger, coming with brilliant ideas, if we coach them in a proper way, in a very friendly environment, and I think we can say, all of us sitting here, that EIT Health is a really very friendly environment for creating innovation and speeding up it. We can leverage the efforts of partners from InnoStars to become global players.